The next segment is people want to know about the situation in India. And before we get into this, I want to preface it.
Yeah, I better move over
by
to Jordan for this
giving some. I think a lot of the reporting of the India COVID catastrophe is slightly misguided because there is another aspect that needs to be looked at. So there is no doubt that India is the cases, the need for medical assistance is just off the chart. It's doomsday scenario over there. But the other,
because it's Donald Trump if he was running a third world country.
It's Donald Trump, but it's more than that. It's not Donald Trump because it's not the US. When we look at India now, particularly when someone looks at the stats, they look at, India, the third richest economy in the world after China and the US. India, IPL contracts are $3 million. India is a fairly wealthy country. So we put them in the same metric as we would places like the UK when the cases went up. Here's a bit of a reality check, and I'm not trying to put down, but it's important to know this. Before the pandemic, every public hospitals, there were 0.55 ventilators for every 100 people.
Whoa.
That, from the beginning, is horrible. So yes, the COVID situation has gotten worse, but it's also in a country that has severely malnourished its health sector for ages. The success story of India, or the shining India success story, is super privatized. The wealth hasn't flowed the same way as it has in countries like in Australia or even China.
Do they have public hospitals?
They do have public hospitals, but they are severely malnourished.
Pandemic
or no pandemic. They have never, and same goes for countries like Pakistan. We're basically just brothers. We have severely neglected health education throughout our history. And countries like India, the onus is on them more because they were in a situation where they were growing rapidly. But their health funding has always been abysmal. Even today, after the pandemic, there are calls to allocate 2.5% of the budget to the health sector, which is being considered crazy. It's insane. Do you know how much we spend on our health sector?
Like
how much
we
spend a lot of money. It's close. It's around 6 to 7% at this point.
Not a third.
And it's growing. And they don't prioritize it. They never have, Modi or no Modi. Even the idea, and then here's a flip side of India. Then there are private hospitals which charge exorbitant amounts of money. And you know what? They do have oxygen. You just need to be able to afford it. And most Indians are poor, so they can't afford it.
India is really harshly capitalist, like old school.
India is harshly capitalist. It has become... The thing was, it was quasi-socialist until the 90s, and it wasn't earning enough money. Then in the 90s, they did some economic reforms, and they became a lot more capitalist. But unlike what I would say was the Chinese model, where they utilized those funds into public sector, India never really did that. India just made a parallel economy where the private sector just started going insane, where you've got people like Ambanis that live in India that have the richest, or Adani for that matter, that are probably would compare to any billionaire in US, China, or UK, or Australia. But on the same, the most expensive house in the world is right on top of a slum. That India hasn't even attempted to negotiate with that issue. Anyway,
so LA of India.
But worse than LA, because the US hasn't done it the way India has. The US has invested money into it. US spends more money on their healthcare system per capita than any other country in the world, including us.
What?
Yes. So the US...
Yeah, but that's a scam.
It may be, but still.
Contracts, right?
There are a lot more per person, per 100 ventilators in the US than there are in
So what you're
in
saying
India.
is it was like a cluster bomb waiting to go off with something like COVID.
I'm just saying... Even pre-pandemic, it was a serious concern.
Gotcha.
Now it's just insane. It's
What are the numbers?
the numbers of people that are dying.
It's really bad, eh?
Well, we don't even know the numbers because
Yeah, of course
journalists. They're saying it's about 3,000 people or 4,000 people or something every day.
Dying.
Yeah, but then
Damn.
like you look at the independent like journalists on the ground. They go to hospitals and they tally the numbers of people that have died from COVID, and they go to the cremation spots, and the numbers don't add up. There's way more people dying. They went to a hospital and asked the person that records all of this, why do you think that is? And he's like, I'm not surprised at all, because most people are dying at home. Do you know why? Most people can't even afford to even go to the public hospital because the
And they don't have
logistics
the
of
room.
it. They don't have the room. They're just dying outside.
Apparently, they're like cremating people like in the streets, and they're just like
Yeah, they're
"There's not enough
making
streets.
makeshift
There's not enough streets."
crematoriums.
Damn. It's like Black Death.
It is
Yeah.
like Black Death in a place that is never was equipped to handle such a thing.
But wait a sec, can I just ask? I thought COVID, in terms of globally, this was the, my ignorance, but I thought that it was kind of subsiding everywhere. It was even in America. It was like they were curbing it because it was really bad in America.
Maybe it just took a lag time to third world countries because there's not as many flights and not many people go there.
I don't know. Well,
No, I
So
know.
their populations are a bit more contained.
What happened was that
because is that not
when the
case?
first wave came, this is okay. So now is the incompetence of the current Indian government that comes into the. When the first wave came, India went into one of the harshest lockdowns ever witnessed at that particular time. Later on, we saw lockdowns, but
That's sick, isn't it?
Yeah.
well, it's not sick for a country where
That
I
are
wouldn't say
sick.
most of the people, but a fair number of people depend on
Out you
daily
go.
wages.
Sorry.
There were laborers that worked daily, and then you impose this harsh lockdown. Do you know people?
Yeah,
there
so
was
they
this
didn't have
exodus.
any JobKeeper.
No
No,
fucking
nothing.
job keeper
Oh,
whatsoever.
dude,
but there was
That's
an
actually very
exodus.
surprising.
There was an exodus of labor going from cities back to their villages. People assume that that's because the lockdown and they were instructed to do it. No. They were afraid of getting sick in the cities.
Oh my
because they were like, if we get sick over here, who the fuck is going to afford medical care? So they would rather go back to their village to essentially die. That's what they were. They were like,
I
okay,
thought that they just listened to Bill Maher's new rule and saying, you know what is really good for COVID? Going outside.
And put down the burger.
So this strategy.
Hey, do you think that, sorry, just as a quick side note, do you think that if India, instead of increasing its budget that it spends on health to 2.5%, they instead put that money into health programs? Not health care, but kind of just like, did you know that broccoli is good for you?
Dude, the Indians are vegetarians.
Yeah, but they just eat dal.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a huge fan of dal.
And a lot of
But-
potatoes.
Oh yeah, that's not very nutrition.
No, I think that
Yeah.
you can increase the budget.
It's nature's chips, but that's still chips.
You can increase the budgets in terms of social. So they do have a social program of sort, which is a step in the positive direction, which they called Swachh Bharat, which I think means clean India, because again, India. Sure, it's the third richest country in the world, but it's also the country that has a huge open defecation issue, which causes diseases every year on its own right.
Really?
See, that's what I'm saying. If you're that poor, I really don't think that the answer is more ventilators and CAT scans.
No, it's a
No,
subs-
you
gonna
definitely
get it.
need ventilators. In a pandemic, you need it.
Yeah,
No,
you
but
definitely
it's
need
it's
them, but can you afford them? You're
But
India.
It's a cultural shift. You know what's a great, and you'll find this interesting. I read this actually. It was about the in Atomic Habits, a book I read, and it was an example about Pakistan. There was a
You're from there, aren't
That's
you?
where you're from. There was no, it is. Don't
And also,
buddy-
you read that book. Your friend Ali is not from India.
Yeah. Hey, Miss Love, your friend Ali. Oh, this book's really speaking to me. There was a doctor that went over to. You'd know about this, I'm sure. That went because it was talking about the psychological effects of small changes in small changes like cultural changes. So like not about logical changes or whatever, just like a cultural phenomenon in terms of like making something popular and giving it a marketing effect, and then it sticks in your mind. Because apparently in the 90s, a doctor went over to Pakistan and like no one was washing their hands with soap, and they couldn't make the majority of people start using soap in the bathrooms and stuff.
And
And
they can't
managed,
make me use so.
and then they managed to number 2 only. most of the time.
Spoiler
Wink, wink.
alert, they're still unsuccessful.
No, but apparently,
that's not the case.
no,
Actually,
apparently, he managed to basically endorse some celebrities of the time and make it more culturally cool to wash your hands with soap, and then like 80% of like gastric diseases gone and dropping just because just the way that they tapped into the psychology of like a habit. And he did that.
Prevention is good, but like what I'm saying is these
But that's
problems
huge,
are
right?
much bigger than this is pre-pandemic world where you're supposed to do this. Right now, their management has, because their priorities are wrong. Their priorities when the pandemic came, India's concern wasn't how the fuck do I vaccinate 1.3 billion people. You know what they were thinking of? Ooh, we're the pharmacy for the world. We'll start exporting vaccines to third world to other countries, and that way we can get influence. We can combat China over there. Their priorities are wrong.
That's not going to work.
You need to fucking fix your own public first. You need to understand how big of a threat you are in.
Wait, they're the vaccine capital of the world?
Yeah, it's the pharmacy capital of the world.
What?
They produce all kinds of medicines that get exported to the rest of the world. In fact, there's a huge problem now because Angela Merkel recently came out and said we need to rethink this because India is now ravaged with COVID. They clearly need vaccines, but there were contracts for vaccines all over the world that were supposed to come from India.
They're not capable.
No, they are still capable, but like there is a huge ethical issue
ethical,
where do I give vaccine to literally the person that is dying next to me or send it off to Germany because we have contractual obligations. And Germany's point of view is, and it's very selfish, but it is, they were saying like, I understand, but if we're going to make you the pharmacy capital of the world, you need to have your shit together.
Yeah.
Is basically their point.
So it's kind of
That
like
you can't be that fucked up, and we still expect you. We've put all our eggs in one basket. So there's this whole rethinking. In fact, there's now issues with Indian foreign policy, India and the U.S., which were coming together as this like this coalition along with Australia and Japan as like the ones that are supposed to guide the 21st century. There's already rifts between Indian relations with the U.S. because India, when this happened, even before it got extremely public, they quietly called the US and said, hey, look, this is a pretty bad situation. You have a lot of AstraZeneca vaccines that you're not even using because most of the American population has now been vaccinated and there are even holes on AstraZeneca because they use Pfizer and other ones. So like, can you give them to us? And the response by the Americans were like, oh, sorry, these vaccines are made for US citizens. And even their press secretary came out and they said, sorry, these vaccines, and there was a legal reason because when Trump sanctioned these vaccines, he said it needs to be used for U.S. But that India was like really shell shocked by that response because they were like, hey, what about the fact that we're coalition members? We share same values. We were together going to fight wars and stuff.
Would Biden have allowed them to use the vaccines
later as damage control? But India is already pissed off by this. They're rethinking their U.S. foreign policy because they're like, if I can't depend on you at the worst time possible, then I don't know if we can look, the geopolitical factors are such that they'll still stay together, at least for the time being, but this has caused a strain in India's relationship with the US. And I think India needs to understand that you can't be like this global geopolitical player and get prominence that way. You need to first get your house in order. You need to first be in a situation where you are strong enough, your institutions are strong enough to be able to withstand all of this, then you go elsewhere. You can't be poor and take over the world. You have to first get rich and then take over the world. And so the current Indian government is more interested in foreign policy objectives of how we can do this to China or how we can form a coalition with the US, how we can send vaccines to like, Bangladesh and then get their promise. Their priorities are completely wrong. And Modi is so... the governance skills are so bad. Like I was saying, there was this massive lockdown, which backfired because you can't do a massive strict lockdown in a country where most of the population depends on daily wages. You're going to get people to starve?
That's true.
And so he did that. That backfired. Then he was like, okay. We're not going to do any of that. And so when this new one came, they were propagating that, we've reached herd immunity, we'd be fine. And they just fucking went into utter collapse.
Shit.
You know what else? He probably still going to win the next election in a landslide.
I don't know, but he
Really?
did. If funnily enough, this is how idiotic the government is. That while India was going through this, there were elections happening at the same time in a state called the state of Bengal, and Modi lost by a 2/3 majority.
Is he supposed to lose?
He not by a 2/3 majority.
So what is
They were
out?
saying that he might win, but he was the one who kept going. They were like, "No, we'll have elections." He allowed
So he's in or
several
out?
of these holy and Hindu festivals where like not hundreds of thousands, millions of people congregate. It's the largest religious festival in the world. It's bigger than the Muslim pilgrimage. And they were like, "Yeah, in a pandemic, well, sure, just go for it."
Shit.
So is it at the stage where everyone has it now?
Yeah, they're the other thing that
So
they
it pales in comparison to, say, Britain.
yes.
Because there was a point I remember where in London, they were turning people away from hospitals,
Right.
and people that were sick were getting in cabs with people that weren't sick and going home.
Fuck.
So the situation is far more dire in India, which now that I say it out loud, that's not surprising at all. Sorry, continue.
Can I-
But I'm
It's
just, it's just
catastrophic.
like,
Can I
it's
just ask-
scary to think that there's a scenario that's much worse than Britain's.
Yeah.
The other thing is, the Indian. There are a few like we knew about the UK variant. There's a few variants. There's everyone knows about like the Brazilian, and there's the Indian one.
I didn't know about
We
that.
don't know a lot.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
variants
that's
also.
not surprising either.
There's South African one. But what we don't know
I
if
know where
the
that's from.
Indian variant is more lethal. But what we know is that it's way more contagious. So
I don't like
in
ants.
the first wave, someone in the family would get a positive COVID result. Most of the people in the family would not get COVID positive. Now everyone in the family is COVID positive.
Fuck.
So it's spreading at a much faster.
Can I ask, what about the surrounding countries? What about Pakistan? Like,
All of them are bad, but Pakistan is better.
why is that? Just borders?
I don't know the answer
His
to
prime
that. I
minister's
wish
better.
No, that's not. the
It's
case.
borders.
I don't
It's borders.
know
You're not
the
even allowed
answer
in
to it.
Pakistani's not allowed in India.
For one, Pakistan has taken what they call them, the SOPs, but like wearing masks and stuff slightly more seriously. Like right now, how funny is this? Some of the people in Pakistan that weren't following the orders, they've got the military to patrol the streets and just be like, you need to do
Russian
this.
style.
And if you don't, then you've got to do push-ups or some shit.
Yes. How's that gonna solve shit?
Well, you
I
can't
don't
put
know,
that
but it
in
just
jail
works in
for
India.
it.
Huh?
You can't put that. It happens in India too, but Pakistan is
I
slightly
swear.
more serious about it. But again, I don't know. Same thing happens with Pakistan.
What about, like, Nepal?
Poorly equipped that if the infections go the way India is, it will also be in a state of catastrophe.
Really? What about Nepal? Because Nepal borders India, right?
Yeah, they're all kind of bad, but the problem is that India is just huge. The scale of everything is much larger over there.
Just
Nepal is a
population.
small country.
Just
Yeah, it's
population.
close to what, 18%
Are they still
of
doing
the
the flag
population?
ceremony?
Well, I don't know what they're doing anymore, but I think it's too late to do anything now. What they really need to be just doing is
What the hell's the
straight up damage control, and hopefully they learn from this that they need to prioritize healthcare a lot more. But yeah, things are pretty bad, and you feel for them. But I just like the whole sort of the narrative in Australia is like, oh, look how bad COVID is, and it's ravaged the country. Yeah, COVID is bad, but the country was also it's hard to say it at this point because they are down, but they needed to do it a lot better, and not now. Like they should have been doing it for like the last 25 years.
You could say the same thing to a way less degree about America, where Trump was. I mean,
You
I know.
couldn't. That's what I'm saying. That's a false equivalency. America,
Right,
yeah,
right,
it could
right.
go bad in America, but America is well equipped.
Yeah, right.
They have
narrative,
catered. By most standards, they're well equipped, just like we are.
Yeah, I
well-equipped,
suppose
too.
you're right. But you can kind of say the same thing in Australia. That's really what happened in our hospital system as well. That they've just been stripping it bare for the last 9 years, and we would have been much better equipped if they did not. The exact same things are happening, I guess, globally, which is that the public sector is slowly dissipating.
Right.
And I suppose it's just going to be way worse in a country like India. It is the case of the world, though.
And in particular for Australia, my criticism is the whole debate right now is the Australian government evil for banning Indians from coming at a time of catastrophe? That's a whole debate all together. But what we should really be talking about is why is the Australian government a year on, now we should blame ourselves too. Why a year on from the pandemic, why do we still not have a decent quarantine facility? Right now, people are like, a lot of people just be like, oh, it's evil and everything. It is, but at the same time, I also understand how infectious this strain is. I also understand that 50% of the people in quarantine facilities are now coming with COVID. So I empathize, but I think the focus should not be on is the government evil or not. The focus should be on how incompetent is our government that we still don't have a decent quarantine facility. We shouldn't have been in this position where we have to ban people. That's something we should need to look, we need to look at ourselves.
Approach. It's too easy for people to be like, that's evil. That's good. That's evil. That's evil. That's good. That's evil. It's so dumb.
6 months ago.
Well, at least they mulled over one of the evil ones.
But 6 months ago, Queensland Premier Palaszczuk, 6 to 7 months ago, started suggesting publicly that, hey, these hotel quarantine options was a make-up option. But we really need to be setting up a proper facility. And I remember Scott Morrison was laughing at her. He said, well, try to convince your people to do it, or try to convince the other premiers to do it. Bitch, what's your job? You are supposed to be convincing her. She's saying something that's actually legitimate. We are also incompetent. Maybe not as incompetent as the Indian government is, but we're not that great either.
No. It's just that there's more wealth here, so it's easier for people. And the other thing is, if you're wealthy, you don't just pray to Vishnu that you don't get it. Yeah. And again, I suppose Scott Morrison did do that, and he is wealthy. Yeah. But the average person, if they have enough wealth and enough resources, they know basic steps that they can take.
And our population,
as opposed to just being like, the festival, John, I'm not going to go.
Yeah, and then obviously our population is a fucking minuscule compared to India, so that's obviously a fucking massive, massive component.
And in my view, is still too high.
Too big, mate. Take that to the bank. No, look, it's all very concerning, and I don't know. I mean, what the fuck do you even say to that? Like, I don't even.
There's nothing you can do.
This pandemic will eventually get over. Eventually, things will go back to normal, however long it takes, 2 years, 3 years. And I'm hoping that once we hit that point where things go back to normal, I hope that all of our governments, including the Indian government, looks at themselves a little bit and prepare themselves not just for another pandemic, but just giving their citizens a quality life. Spend less on Rafael jets and trying to colonize the Indian Ocean, and spend more on health and education.
Well, that's not going to happen.
I hope it will. I hope it will.
How do you know?
Because, dude, it's Modi.
I don't know anything about
He's so
Modi.
lame.
Is he?
Yeah.
What's his vibe? I don't know anything about him.
You know what it is? Uncharismatic, dumb, medieval Trump.
Oh, damn.
Don't you think?
It's
rough. Just Donald Trump with none of the redeeming factors.
Yeah, he's like a Hindu nationalist.
Right.
Well, at least he believes in something.
Yeah.
As opposed to Trump just being like, I did make Trump steaks, damn it. That's what I believe in.
And they were tasty. Fuck. Well, yeah, I'm definitely gonna look into that. I mean, I did know about it, but
Carl, what's his name? Carl
Stefanovic. Yeah.
Stefanovic. He got into a live brawl with Scott Morrison over this issue.
Really? What he was like?
Such a Carl thing to do. But go on.
Basically, Carl was saying it's really unfair that you've banned Australians from coming here, and Scott Morrison was saying that we've based it on like risk perception, blah blah blah. No one ever mentioned like why you aren't prepared for it.
Yeah. Again, it's probably at this
and Scott
position
Morrison
a good move because we don't have the facilities. It's like being like, you know what I mean? It's like being like, it's like if you had this preemptive measure, it would all be fine. But you're too incompetent to have it, so yeah, this is probably the best move now. But that's not a congratulations.
Well, that's an explosive
is it?
opinion at the moment because there's a lot of people upset about the banning of Indians because there's like 9,000 Australians that are currently in India, including cricketers.
Yeah, but if you've got no quarantine base, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
We do have a quarantine base, but I think, look,
It's called the Ruby Princess.
I am
Just off the shore.
I'm guessing
It's not a bad idea, actually.
that the risk perception of the number crunchers that advised the chief medical officer said that if we allow it, there is a risk that it will seep into the community. And from what we can gather from the data that we have from India, that if it goes out, it's going to be a lot harder to contain it because it's way more infectious.
Yeah, well,
So it's that. Then there is another opinion that no, we should be fine. We should be able to cater for them. I don't know the facts.
Should be, but
it's risky, dude.
yeah,
Like,
we couldn't even do it when there was a couple of Germans in
yeah.
in Victoria.
I don't think Carl will be as happy if he gets that strain.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, what if it was you, Carl?
Think about it.
You clearly
But,
haven't.
but Scott Morrison did say
Shame,
something
Carl,
that
shame.
made Scott Morrison did say something that made
Miss
Carl
loves
go.
spinach.
Scott Morrison.
Sorry.
Scott Morrison was saying how Carl was saying this is unprecedented that you just ban people from coming in, citizens coming in, and Scott Morrison was, well, I did with the China too, when the Wuhan crisis first started. And that's true. The other thing is, for people saying it's unprecedented, there's one example. Then the other example was ISIS brides. You know, all the women that went to Syria and
yeah.
Iraq to fight. Technically, their husbands may have committed crimes.
Right.
They could have been taken there out of force. We don't know. We need to like try them to find out if they are guilty.
They weren't let back.
But we didn't let them come in. So it's not that unprecedented. I don't know if it's the best move either. So I don't want to like say I'm on the side of the Liberal Party on this. They know what the risk perceptions are.
It sounds pretty fucking serious. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a
I don't know.
stupid.
Things in India are not fun right now. I like so many people that I know. My brother knows who's like, yeah, my dad has COVID. My auntie died from COVID. Like everyone has. Every fucking person has someone from the immediate family member that has it.
Fuck. Dang.
It's insane.
I wonder what would happen if it got to North Sentinel Island.
Where's that?
Dude, that would kill all of them.
Where's that?
That's the island of uncontacted people that
be
apparently are a little more contacted than we thought.
Right.
But
right. Shit.
and the only people that do contact them are Indians.
Yeah.
So there must be their version of Scott Morrison right now just being like, that's it, no more waving at that fishing boat.
Fuck.
But you think that it'd kill everyone there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder
think
what
it
their
will wipe it
quarantine
out.
strategy would be.
There's like,
Voodoo.
aren't there like 10 people there? I guess just like give them a room.
I think it's 250.
Yeah,
That's a big population.
but I'm guessing COVID.
It'd be really interesting to see how uncontacted tribes handle COVID.
They wouldn't handle it. I don't know, actually. Either it would be really good or they'd actually be okay because they're obviously.
they won't be. They have no immunity. They haven't been contacted by the rest of us.
But I feel like they
Even
Maybe
without
they
COVID,
just
they would die.
make the tough decisions that we all want our leaders to do, i.e., bash the old chick over the head with a rock.
But the thing is, they live healthy. Like they don't eat like.
Yeah,
you know,
but they don't have those immunities that you have being from from a community
But surely there's a
that
certain
has
level.
interacted with the rest of the
But
world.
do we have immunities to
No,
COVID?
yeah,
Isn't that why
No,
it's
we don't
a
have
big
immunities
deal?
to
Dude,
COVID.
what's
But they don't have
you know
immunity
what's
to anything.
But you
They
know
don't
what's
even have
immu-
immunity
you know
to
what's,
most flus.
You know what's the first fucking barrier against like fighting infectious diseases?
I have immunity to COVID, just saying.
Yeah, well, or he left.
Hey,
dementia.
yeah. Hell yeah. Time to make contact with North Sentinel.
No, dude. The first like the battlefront of like defeating disease.
What, sorry?
Defeating infectious
And they'd be like,
disease.
yes, I listen to the speaker every fucking day, you asshole.
Yeah, turn it down. Anyway,
Go on.
having a good immune system and eating like well is a good way to fight.
No,
infectious
it's for sure, but,
disease.
like,
so, like
look,
I think
it's-
they'd be fine. They'd
It's-
be better off.
I understand that. That's true for all of us,
Yeah.
but less so for uncontacted tribes.
I don't know if it would be. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No. When because their cousins or closest relatives that are on islands that are close by. I can't remember what they're called, the Jawanese. I just remember that they have a very similar name to those little people in hoods in Star Wars that are trying to junk C-3PO. It was like, get off me, get off me.
Like, they're cool.
They pretty much are dying for the same reason, which is just what happens in colonization, that even when you're trying to be nice to the people like the Indian government somewhat is all those diseases just go straight through their communities and kill them all off.
I guess you're right then.
It's best for
But
them.
I want to know what their quarantine procedure is for something that they don't know exists.
Yeah, Jesus.
They don't have a quarantine.
Isn't it weird that the
Stupid.
whole world for the last year has completely stopped, except on North Sentinel? It's been exactly the same.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
It's kind of
no.
cool. Finally, some poetic justice, you know?
For what?
For them just being like, we were right. You don't need iPhones, you know?
Now, the next question. What is an iPhone?